For 4 years, I've been predicting Cobra Kai twists, and some of them came true years before they happened. Today I'm proving it with receipts. Quick disclaimer. Now keep in mind, I did not have access to any type of early screening material until Season 6 Parts 2 and 3, so these were all based off of my speculation of trends and how the show mirrored the original movies. Specifically with Season 6 Part 2, I didn't receive early access until a week before the season's premiere, so my original theories were purely based off of speculation. Let's break down my predictions. My very first prediction, or deduction in this case, was who Shawn was in the Cobra Kai video game in my first video, how Cobra Kai game ties into Season 3. Here's a brief recap of what happened.
Out of all these shots, this guy is what sticks out to me, the leader of the trio who confronts Robby. Why? Well, in the Cobra Kai video game, every boss and mini-boss is someone we've seen from the show. Whether it's somebody from Cobra Kai or Miyagi-Do, depending on what side you're playing on, let's say for example, Hawk, Demetri, Robby Miguel, to even characters who didn't even fight at all in the series, Tom Cole, Sid, Armand, Yasmin, etc. Except for one character, Shawn, the mini-boss of the shopping mall and someone who's also prominently featured in both the pre-level and post-level cutscenes related to the shopping mall. This really puzzled me because it made me wonder why they made an original character that didn't exist in Season 1, 2, the entire anthology, etc. when they used nearly every minor character from the series. Hell, even the very first mini-boss, Derek, was a pretty obscure character. He wasn't even given a name in the show, just recognizable as the third man that Kreese and Trey now have with Robby gone. Then it hit me. What if Shawn's not obscure, but just hadn't been seen in the series yet? First, let's see a side-by-side comparison of these guys. Granted, Cobra Kai's video game art style is hit and miss and sometimes no likeness, but for the most part, it's pretty spot on, even with Shawn here. It's a near identical match down to the facial structure and hairstyle. Let's also take a look at the dialogue related to this boss fight. His intro scene says, "Ain't going to juvie," so we know despite how the voice actor sounds, he's a teenager like the students in Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai, but also the key word here, juvie. In fact, it shows up again after you defeat Hawk or Demetri. Shawn shows up and then the security guard arrives and says, "Not on my watch, troublemakers, it's juvie time." And where do we see this unnamed character until now? In the juvenile detention center confronting Robby in the newest teaser.
Now, this wasn't a super huge reveal, but as far as I know, I was the first one, or one of the first, to talk about who this character was that we had not seen in the show yet. And little did we know that he would become a fan favorite despite his limited appearance in the series. Shawn officially made his debut in the episode, Now You're Gonna Pay. The next prediction from the video game and from the same video was that Tom Cole was going to be involved in shady dealings. Here's that prediction.
Another moment we see in the teasers that Johnny and Daniel are looking for leads throughout town after agreeing to team up. This could be them investigating something Kreese possibly has up his sleeve, maybe how he was able to fund his takeover at Johnny's dojo. We see them confronting what seems to be sketchy mechanics in either a garage or a chop shop. How does this tie the game in? Well, in the video game, there's a very similar area in the LaRusso Auto level where you fight in the garage, and a common enemy of this level is the mechanic. Granted, at first I thought he was just a generic themed enemy in an appropriate level, but after seeing the teaser, maybe the game was teasing the upcoming arc/fight that occurs in a similar garage. After all, in the video game, Tom Cole was told by Kreese to trash LaRusso Auto, steal inventory from the said dealership, and as long as he did what he was told, would have been able to take over Daniel's dealership with Kreese's help. Perhaps we could see something similar in Season 3, where Kreese has Tom Cole involved in moving parts and cars from LaRusso Auto to Cole's, or having his garages involved in some shady dealings, and this is what causes Daniel and Johnny to investigate in a Tango and Cash sort of way.
This was sorta right, though it was revealed that in Now You're Gonna Pay, that Cole's shady dealings didn't have anything to do with Kreese or stealing parts from LaRusso Auto, but he did want to take over Daniel's dealership via buyout, as he took advantage of the bad publicity from Miyagi-Do's involvement in the school fight and convinced Doyona International to cut ties with LaRusso Auto Group. I think had Terry Silver been involved earlier, he would have aligned with Cole to help put LaRusso out of business in this manner, or at least attempted to. In my second video, How Reunited Apart confirmed Robby joining Kreese, I speculated that because of Tanner Buchanan and Martin Coe's notable absence for most of the video, especially the big Karate Kid Cash reunion, this hinted towards Robby joining Cobra Kai.
Tanner shows up saying he was on a rival episode, and Martin Coe shows up right after him, telling Tanner not to be merciful and reciting his famous creed that here, on the streets, in competition, if a man faces you, he is the enemy. This is obviously another tease of what's to come in Season 3, hiding in plain sight.
This happened at the end of The Good, the Bad, and the Badass, where Robby sought out Kreese, eventually proved he was Cobra Kai material in Feel the Night, and officially joined in Season 4 Episode 1, Let's Begin. However, I was not the first person to correctly predict this. That credit would go to Watch Party, who called this in his video, Robby will join Cobra Kai Season 3 Theory, which was uploaded on June 8th, 2020, 6.5 months before my video was uploaded on December 22nd, 2020. My third video, Why Johnny Lawrence is the Better Sensei, noted a lot of parallels and comparisons between the sensei of and his unlikely predecessor, Mr. Miyagi.
Johnny and Miyagi are different but same. Johnny, as mentioned before in the Faults and Flaws breakdown, does something a lot more than Daniel has trouble doing but what Mr. Miyagi taught him through the principles of inner peace and focus, taking the high road and stay calm. Daniel and Johnny at times can both be hotheads, but you would imagine that Daniel, having trained with Miyagi for many years up until Miyagi's passing, and where Cobra Kai begins, would have taken the lessons to heart a little more, especially with the principle of balance, but yet has had more outbursts and strays away from staying focused. Johnny over time has learned to stay calm in situations and take the high road like Miyagi would. For example, Miyagi is very cool and collected in situations such as being confronted by Kreese and Silver after their fight when they trash talk Miyagi and Daniel, especially with the statement, "Come, we waste our time here." With the bonsai shop being wrecked, and also with Daniel being visibly upset over not learning anything chore-wise at first. Johnny's more willing to follow this advice as it was given to him, by Miguel for the All Valley Conference meeting and also by Carmen for the next time Daniel confronts Johnny. Johnny says he won't give in to anger and be the bigger man. Miyagi and Johnny are not afraid to reprimand their students or to make sure that they stay grounded and focused, but also forgive them. Miyagi had done this during training with Daniel on teaching him how to punch, and Daniel would let his arrogance get the best of him. Miyagi would also do this in Karate Kid 3 when Daniel would be seduced by Silver's promise to teach him to get the better of Mike Barnes. Despite his angry outbursts in Mr. Miyagi and lying to him as well, Mr. Miyagi forgives Daniel and continues to be a mentor to Daniel up until his death. We also see this with Johnny. At the All Valley tournament, he vocalizes his issue with Hawk and Miguel fighting dirty and injuring their opponents. He realizes the fault of his teachings and not being clear on the principles of Cobra Kai. Throughout Season 2, he vows to correct these in a number of ways, teaching the students to move forward, to show mercy through good judgment calls, and also bonding more with Miguel, especially teaching Miguel the difference between mercy and honor. After finding out the Miyagi-Do was trashed by the students of Cobra Kai, he forces the students to do burpees until one of them breaks and admits they were responsible, saying that bullshit we don't teach in here, further proving his intention that he wants to be more honorable and set that example for his students. Unfortunately, another similarity that Miyagi and Johnny also share is that they both had trauma occur in their lives that in the end led them to be better people. Mr. Miyagi would be plagued by the loss of his son and wife for many years, and although during the entire franchise we see him only go into a drunken depression once, we can speculate that this happened many other times we just didn't see on screen. Speaking from personal experience as someone who has PTSD, trauma can stay with you for a very long time and can be deeply rooted to the point to where it still hurts just as it did the first time. This is evident with Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid 1. Johnny also has his own trauma he deals with, the death of his mother, his strained relationship with his son, and also his self-doubt of not being a good enough sensei to Miguel and other Cobra Kai, especially after having a sensei like Kreese who almost choked him to death. Johnny also copes with this by drinking. Although not at all a recommended way to cope with trauma, this is something that he and Miyagi both do. We also don't know much of Johnny's life that occurred between Karate Kid 2 and the birth of Robby, so there may be other demons that he's fighting as well. The last thing that makes Johnny much more like Miyagi is broken up into two parts: the pact they make with their students and their straightforward style of teaching. After taking Daniel to his dojo, Miyagi makes a sacred pact with Daniel, to be able to give it his all and not question his methods. He promises him to teach him karate as long as Daniel does what he asks. Johnny asks a very similar thing of Miguel when he brings back Cobra Kai. He asks Miguel that once he goes down this path there is no turning back, expecting that Miguel must be willing to give it his all, and in turn Johnny will teach him karate. Johnny also even tells Miguel at one point to not question his methods, and that he's going to keep his part of the bargain. The way they both teach is very straightforward. Once Daniel moves past muscle memory, Miyagi is straightforward when teaching him to be able to balance physically, how to punch, how to do the drum technique, and also in learning kata. When Daniel does not show Miyagi immediately what he learns, Miyagi yells, "Shut up!" Very similar to how Johnny always yells when he needs the student to focus. Johnny also teaches very straightforward when it comes to striking, headbutting, slithering, etc.
These parallels were not only true as far as the first two seasons at the time, but more parallels would occur in later seasons. Johnny being helped to bed while being drunk in Season 4, fighting Silver in the old Cobra Kai dojo location, and even a health scare which I'll talk about later on in the video. Why Hawk is an awesome character had a very brief sentence that had no intention of a prediction behind it, and I also touched on this in Why Miguel is the Chosen One, but a lot of people came back to Hawk's video after the end of Season 4 and said I correctly predicted Hawk beating Robby in the All Valley Finals.
While I would be okay with somebody else other than Miguel winning the tournament, for example Hawk, we cannot overlook that Miguel is the perfect blend of hero that Miyagi-Do and Eagle-Fang needs. When fighting against Brooks, he was able to catch him off guard and keep a psychological advantage, not only over him who begged him to stop, but also Kyler, as Kyler doubted his abilities initially, but then could not even look Hawk in the face when Hawk would stare Kyler down after leaving Brooks on the mat. This tactic was also most notably used by Mike Tyson, who would intimidate his opponents with this gaze and then immediately go on the offensive to knock out his opponents. If Hawk is able to utilize this strategy more often, he could hold his own even against the likes of Robby.
As much as I would like to take credit for this, I would say I'm kinda right about this. At the time, I was talking about how if Hawk maintained a level head, he could defeat opponents that gave him trouble before. Though given Miguel's injury and his subsequent dropout, I can see why a lot of people liked what I said here. Another somewhat major level victory that I predicted was in the title of my Miguel character analysis. He was the hero of the story. Here are some of his character traits I was discussing in the analysis.
Here is why I believe Miguel is the chosen one out of both of these generations and what kind of role he will play in Season 4 and onward. The first thing to note is that where Robby now represents the wrong path in the realm of Cobra Kai, Miguel is the opposite side of the coin, where although he was corrupted at first, managed to get back on the right path thanks to Johnny's help and now further help from Daniel going forward. Miguel, like Robby, has a tendency to learn things very quickly compared to his predecessors. Johnny was a skilled martial artist, but had been training consistently for 5 years when he faced off against Daniel, and Daniel trained for maybe at most a month and a half to 2 months in Karate Kid 1, and under a year in Karate Kid 2, and about the same amount of time in Karate Kid 3, as Karate Kid 3 begins right when Daniel and Miyagi returned from Okinawa. What makes Miguel different from Daniel in this aspect is that he mastered these techniques even quicker than Daniel. Miguel learned the crane kick and performed purely by imitating Daniel, and learned the drum technique when it was showed to him once, while Daniel had spent most of the movie, or rather all summer, trying to figure out how to do the technique and also throw a counter punch in, which is something Miguel had not learned from, as Sam showed him only how to evade punches with it. Where Robby may have had a natural advantage due to his genetics, Miguel's consistent hard work and determination he put to his training when he could train has always paid off and thus has made him a very skilled fighter. Much like Johnny and Miyagi, Miguel is very forward thinking at times, as he keeps an open mind and often finds a solution that may not be readily present in front of him. For example, although he did not know Johnny was bullied in his youth, it is his plea where he tells Johnny that he does not understand what it's like to be them is what gets Johnny to remember his past and be able to connect with his dojo that he was like them and will help them shed their skin into something greater. Another example is giving Johnny the idea to appeal to the All Valley Conference, even giving him an anger management technique that proves successful and thus gets Cobra Kai reinstated when Johnny speaks from the heart. Miguel's open mind is what allows him to not only reform his ways, but also allows him to listen to both Johnny and Daniel's side of the story, and tries to understand both of their perspectives. It is very interesting to note in the Season 3 episode, The Good, the Bad, and the Badass, during the City Council hearing for the All Valley Tournament, Kreese, Johnny, and Daniel are unable to provide a reason to the City Council to stop them from canceling the tournament, as the Council describes their outbursts all reasons why it should be cancelled. It is a lost cause until Miguel steps forward and is the one to make a passionate speech along with Sam that the All Valley should be there to help fight the bullies of the world, and how karate made him more confident, athletic, and taught him many values, thanks to studying under Johnny. Another interesting detail in this episode is where the three dojos respond with the Yes Sensei. Miguel is in the middle, as he represents the balance of all three dojos, good-natured but tough if he has to be. Miguel's fighting style has also evolved over time. During notable fights in Season 2, such as his first encounter with Tory in his duel with Hawk at Coyote Creek, he practices more defense and strikes only at the right time, compared to Hawk, for example, who fights aggressively and constantly presses the attack. I suspect with Daniel's training, his defense could be even better and Miguel could be deadly in the All Valley Tournament if he further hones his mix of offense and defense. In what could be foreshadowing to his fight with Kyler at the end of Season 3, when Sam visits him in the hospital in the episode Now You're Gonna Pay, she tells him if anyone can beat the odds, it's you. This is exactly what happens during the December 19th fight, as Kyler purposely singles out Miguel because he knows that Miguel just relearned to walk, much how he's always picking on people he knows that would not be able to defend themselves. Even though he was at a severe disadvantage, Miguel was still able to power through and still overpower Kyler, showing how formidable he is even when not at 100%. Miguel is also very loyal to Johnny, as Johnny was always there for him, and has the same loyalty to his friends around him, much how Miyagi knows that Daniel was the same way when getting to know him. Much how they did at the council meeting, Miguel was also able to unite the dojos with the help of Samantha, and even during his confrontation with Robby, he still does not hold any ill will, and it could be implied that he forgave Robby for injuring him, despite Robby not apologizing for injuring Miguel. Now training under two senseis, I think Miguel will be even a greater fighter and individual than he was before, as he has the perfect balance of character qualities from both Johnny and Daniel. While I would be okay with somebody else other than Miguel winning the tournament, for example Hawk, we cannot overlook that Miguel is the perfect blend of hero that Miyagi-Do and Miyagi-Fang needs, and in my opinion is the chosen one of this story.
Though at this point, Robby winning would have given his character a much deeper arc, I was right here, as we saw in the episode Strike Last, where Miguel became a world champion. Learning from both of his senseis and also Chozen and Mike Barnes, Diaz helped bring Cobra Kai back the way Johnny wanted it, while also showing that you can have the perfect blend of merciful and merciless when the time was right. Although it happened much later on, I predicted that given the events of what happened up to this point, Daniel would learn to put his grudge aside, especially after his talk with Chozen in Okinawa, and patch things up with Johnny in my video, How Daniel Finally Found Balance.
This is what I would like to see happen to Daniel in the future. Although the possibility of the combined dojo splitting up is very real, I think at this point Daniel has to do everything in his power to put aside the grudge and realize that the common enemy is Kreese, and they cannot let him win at all. Daniel has also realized that Miguel is a good kid and will not be a bad influence at all when it comes to training, and could even go on to trust Miguel with some Miyagi-Do techniques. I think Daniel's friendship with Johnny could be strengthened even more by being able to have somebody to keep his karate sharp, as they never got to have that sparring match back in Season 1. Johnny teaching Daniel's students offense could be very eye-opening for Daniel, as Chozen himself told Daniel defense takes on many forms. It's not simply a block, dodge, or parry, but whatever that is needed to stop the opponent from attacking. By the same token, Johnny's student learning Miyagi-Do defense will be eye-opening for Johnny, as he will see that Daniel is not afraid to strike when necessary, much how he gave Daniel permission to do so against Kreese.
This seemingly happened at the end of Season 3, though they had a rough patch in Season 4, but things were very good between Johnny and Daniel in Season 5. However, Season 6 Part 1 had them split, but things were finally resolved at the end of Season 6 Part 2, even with Daniel rebuying the Cobra Kai dojo for Johnny because of his belief in him. Here, I would say I was sort of right with the initial prediction. Although there was very little indication in Season 3 that Chozen would aid Daniel, I did predict this in his first character analysis video, How Chozen Found Redemption.
I think the only way Chozen would be able to tie in is Season 4 if he's brought in as a guest sensei to help teach Miyagi-Do defense before the tournament.
This kinda did happen, just not exactly as I called it. Chozen officially agreed to help at the end of Season 4 in the episode The Rise, and we see him officially teach both Daniel and Johnny's students in the episode Bad Eggs. We would even see a student such as Demetri display their improved techniques in the episode Head of the Snake. What seemed to be dream matches among the Karate Kid fandom for many years turned into reality. In Chozen's character analysis and in my first Terry Silver video, Why Terry Silver is Terrifying, I made some predictions that Chozen would fight both Terry Silver and Mike Barnes.
Although I think at this point everyone wants to see a dream match of Daniel, Johnny, and Chozen versus Kreese, Terry Silver, and Mike Barnes, I think the only way Chozen would be able to tie in is Season 4 if he's brought in as a guest sensei to help teach Miyagi-Do defense before the tournament. While it would be awesome to see him engage with Kreese, Silver, or Barnes, I'm not sure if the writers would be ready to make that happen unless it was done the right way. If Chozen is the best defensive fighter, then Silver has to be the best offensive fighter at this point, as Terry never lost his touch. I would have loved to have seen a fight between Daniel and Terry, but this is something we most likely will see in Season 5. We may even see a fight between Chozen and Silver instead, which honestly would excite me into seeing a dream match we previously never thought possible.
This kinda did happen, though not in the ways that I or others may have expected. Chozen fought Mike Barnes due to a misunderstanding in the latter's furniture store in the episode Playing with Fire, and Taguchi also would take on Silver in Head of the Snake in one of the best fights of the series. It was clear Chozen had the upper hand, but Silver ultimately was the last one left standing thanks to a sneak attack. Yet another Chozen prediction was made in not only How Chozen Found Redemption, but also Johnny's second video, Why Johnny Lawrence is Becoming a Better Sensei. The two Karate Kid antagonists would have a lot in common and would actually get along.
I could also see Johnny and Chozen getting along and recounting what they have learned about honor in their own lives, and can use that lesson to pass on to the students, along with discussing their past run-ins with Daniel. I'm also interested in Johnny teaming up with Chozen, and I hope the two talk about their past interactions with Daniel in the 80s for a comedic effect.
This seemed to be inevitable as both had learned the errors of their ways at this point and had been seemingly on good terms with LaRusso despite previous differences. The banter between the two in Ouroboros was classic and is one of my favorite moments of Season 5. One of the last Chozen predictions in his Season 3 video was that if he did come back to teach, he would be able to teach the students how to defend against multiple attackers, one of his notable feats seen a couple times in Karate Kid Part 2.
Chozen could also teach the students how to defend from multiple attackers, as this could be a situation that is very likely to happen with Kreese's Cobra Kai.
Though this prediction was a little early, it did become a significant plot point in Season 5. Chozen taught Miyagi-Fang to protect the egg, and this served them well in the raid on Cobra Kai in Head of the Snake, as they were able to buy Anthony enough time to expose Terry Silver. Despite my initial disliking of Tory as a character, notably in Season 2 and 3, I did predict that a redemption was still possible in The Problem with Tory, my first character analysis video on Nichols.
Can she be redeemed? I think it is possible, but it would have to take something very drastic to happen. Kreese's grip on her would not be broken so easily, and because of Hawk defecting to Miyagi-Do and Miyagi-Fang, Kreese would have to rely on Robby and Tory to lead the team in the All Valley. I would love the idea of Julie Pierce being the one to redeem Tory, and it would make sense, but as of now, it is unknown if we'll see any next Karate Kid characters, despite them being canon. The only other way I would see it happening if she is willing to listen is possibly a combination of multiple characters. Miguel, Sam, Hawk, and even Johnny trying to convince Tory to realize that Kreese is only using her for his own agenda.
Though this was a little too early to call, this eventually came true more definitively in Season 6, notably with Tory and Sam putting the past behind them in Sleeper, Tory's initial refusal to join Kreese and stick with Miyagi-Do prior to her mother's passing in Best of the Best, and the rest of Season 6 starting with the episode Rattled, where she and Sam were friendly rivals. As we know, Sam would support Tory's shot at the Sekai Taikai finals by helping her train even prior to Johnny getting control of the Cobra Kai once more. As a personal note, I think her redemption arc was the least predictable and made me appreciate her journey as a character even more. Though we had not even seen his character yet, I correctly assumed in the same video of Tory's character analysis that Terry Silver was a lost cause.
I'm also okay with not everybody being redeemed either, and characters like Kreese, Silver, Barnes, and unless it changes, Robby are lost causes. Until then, we will have to see what Season 4 brings to the table.
I would say this was a bold assumption, considering we hadn't seen Terry Silver on screen yet in the present day, as this was before Season 4, but given what we saw in the episode Party Time, it was all downhill for Terry from there as far as his redemption. And why Sam was a polarizing character, I predicted that Sam LaRusso would help carry the team and would elevate as a fighter due to learning from Johnny Lawrence.
Because of Demetri and Miguel still recovering from their respective injuries, Sam and Hawk at this point may have to carry the team to victory in the All Valley, as they both have been training the longest. Sam also has knowledge of possibly all the special techniques that Daniel knows, including the drum technique and the crane kick, which could help her in the tournament. She also has excellent defense. In the house fight, she took one strike from a Cobra Kai student and took another from Tory when she was cornered by her. She also has demonstrated some ability to take down or throw an opponent using their momentum, as seen in the house fight in the arcade. She also has the ability to take damage like Tory, as seen during the school fight. If Sam can keep her trauma at bay, she could very well be at her prime thanks to both Daniel and Johnny teaching her.
Given how Season 4 played out, I was kinda right about this. Sam did help Hawk carry Miyagi-Do all the way to the finals in the All Valley tournament, though ultimately lost because of a crooked ref. However, she did expand her repertoire as a fighter because of learning Eagle Fang, even scoring the first point on Tory with a flying tornado kick. Although this was not a prediction per se, I did question that we did not know much about Amanda LaRusso's family. This was something I briefly touched on in her character analysis video, How Amanda Keeps Daniel Grounded.
One thing that does stick out to me is that we hear very little about her family. While I do not suspect or have the basis to think she would be related to somebody from the movies, it is very odd that not much is mentioned about Amanda's family at all.
Funny enough, this would become a plot point in both Season 4 and Season 5. Amanda relates to Tory in Kicks Get Chicks as she explains to Daniel that she went through similar troubles in high school, and in Downward Spiral, it's revealed that Amanda was the cousin of Jessica Andrews, who introduced the two to each other. While not a prediction, I threw out some free ideas in my video what the next Cobra Kai game should look like.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room and something that is currently missing from the pre-existing game: online play. Now, I know this game was made to be more of a couch co-op game, and the multiplayer mode itself is very smooth. However, when the video game was released at the end of October 2020, this was during the pandemic, which is still ongoing. And not to mention that most people that do game jump into online multiplayer modes nowadays. I recommended this game to a lot of my friends. The only problem is that most of these friends live the minimum of 1 hour away, so it wouldn't be anytime soon that I would be seeing them. Online connectivity is something I would definitely jump on when the next Cobra Kai game comes out. Side note, something else that is slowly becoming more common these days is crossplay. Having people being able to play online together despite having the game on different consoles would be another huge benefit for the next installment. Different game modes. Now, I'm not against keeping the current Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monk style gameplay that Cobra Kai currently incorporates, but there are some sorely missed modes that should be in the next game. The first would be a movie mode. What I mean by this is playing through levels that are based on scenes out of the movies and the TV show. For example, fighting Johnny at the All Valley tournament, participating in the Season 2 school fight, fighting against Chozen in 1985, sparring with Chozen in Okinawa, the list goes on. Also, if you are keeping the option to play either Daniel or Johnny's side of the story, This would also give us perhaps some unique levels that would explore what Johnny did between 1984 and 2018. A prime example of this movie mode and how it's worked so far are in the video games Rocky and Rocky Legends. You have your fights that play out just like the movies, so going against Apollo Creed, Clubber Lang, and Ivan Drago for example, but you get to fight other opponents and also train between those bouts in mini-games. A training mini-game with some appropriate music such as Like a Dance while training as either Miguel, Robby, Sam, or Hawk would definitely also give us a break from the purely beat-em-up gameplay to something that would just test our knowledge on current skills and abilities. What could also be unique to movie mode is a what-if scenario. For example, if Johnny beat Daniel in 1984 and we get a completely different timeline to play through. This is something that's slightly touched upon in Rocky Legends where if you beat Rocky as either Apollo, Clubber, or Drago. Even playing as some of the villains out of the Spider-Man 2002 movie video game, and I know I keep bringing up the 2000s, but this era did the movie game genre pretty well, and it's a shame you don't see movie games anymore, like Chozen or Mike Barnes, and get some movie mode timelines like that as well. Another mode that has seriously been voiced from people I know that play the game, and that would agree, is a versus mode. This would be amazing to have as we could have the ability to play as both heroes and villains, and say after beating the movie mode, you get an option to use your fully upgraded character in this versus mode. Either way, a one-on-one fighting game mode is something that's definitely needed for the next game, and you could have all sorts of dream matchups to simulate. Chozen 85 versus Johnny 84, Miguel Season 2 versus Daniel 85, Season 3 Hawk versus Dutch, Julie Pierce versus Season 3 Sam, and more. Last but not least, what else I want to see is mentioned above, the ability to play as legacy characters whether they be good or bad guys, and have outfit options with appropriate skill sets. For example, playing as 84 Daniel, your only mega move so to speak would be the crane kick, but if you played as 85/Karate Kid 3 Daniel, you would have access to the drum technique in kata, and say the kata could boost your focus meter for example. I would be totally okay running through the game under specific requirements to unlock Mr. Miyagi as a near boss character to play through other modes with. As someone who is not normally a fan of DLC whatsoever, I would totally be okay with paying money to play as Miyagi if they went this route, or to unlock Chozen, or other outfits with specific abilities.
Funny enough, some of these ideas would make it into Cobra Kai 2 Dojo's Rising, specifically online play, Cobra Classics, and legacy characters to an extent. Despite an interesting concept of being able to recruit students to your own dojo, the game was poorly executed and is perceived as the worst game of the franchise. I personally didn't think that Miguel would win the tournament in Season 4 due to his recent back injury in my analysis of the Cobra Kai Season 4 trailer.
The next two characters I want to talk about are Demetri and Miguel. For the most part, it seems that they are both back to 100% from what we can see. However, note that all shots involving Miguel, whether it is him practicing with Daniel or by himself, all involve punches and no kicks whatsoever. This could be a continued plot point of Season 4 where Miguel is still trying to strengthen his legs, considering how much of a problem he had with Kyler, someone he would have been able to beat if he was at 100%.
As we saw in Season 4, this turned out to be true. In both episodes, The Fall and The Rise, Miguel pushed himself a little too far and pulled a muscle in his back. This was even hinted at in Minefields, where Carmen noted that Miggy had been stretching since 6 AM. Realistically, it wouldn't make sense for Miguel to win this tournament so soon after just relearning to walk, and he didn't exactly have a clear mind either. Although this was a heavy rumor going into Season 4 where Hawk would lose his hair, I expanded upon this with my prediction where Hawk realizes that it's not the hair that makes him who he is, but rather his confidence, also in the Cobra Kai Season 4 trailer analysis.
Of course, we can't forget about our boy Hawk. If it isn't obvious already, they are purposely hiding his hair for a reason, hinting that he's going to go through another hair change in Season 4. We also know this for sure because again, in the shot where Daniel and Miguel are training together, he can be seen in the background still with his red mohawk. The first shot we see of him is doing a kick, but his head is out of frame, while in the close-up, the top of his hair can't be seen. As mentioned before, he could be trying to attack Robby in the shot that we see at the dojo, but it's still too hard to say for the time being. Rumors involving his hair that have also been making the rounds since Season 3 debuted is that Cobra Kai will either jump Hawk and shave off his hair, or Hawk chooses himself to shave it or change it to a different color entirely. We can only suspect that there may be an arc where Hawk realizes he doesn't need the hair to be a badass, and is coming to terms with this.
As we saw in The Fall, Moon notes the reason she liked Hawk was because of his energy and confidence. This reawakened Hawk's confidence to where he beats Kyler swiftly without losing a single point, and even goes on to win the championship. Though it seemed like a stretch at the time, Robby had similarities to Ivan Drago in the Season 4 All Valley trailer. The Big Three had also hinted that Season 4 would have vibes of all the Rocky movies rolled into one.
The first shot we see of Robby is striking the air fiercely. Although we can definitely assume he's keeping the hair short to look very Kreese-like, the Rocky analogy isn't too far off, as if we slow this down, he does somewhat resemble Ivan Drago throwing a punch, especially considering the similar hair. The other shot of Robby walking towards the camera while cocking his head to the side is something Ivan Drago does in his fight with Apollo Creed. Now, I don't think they'll go as so far to have someone die, at least I hope not, during a fight with Robby, but given the fact that he knows both Miyagi-Do and now Cobra Kai, and considering how Miguel and Demetri were injured, he is definitely going to be formidable and the Drago of the tournament. This could only mean that either someone will get hurt and be the Apollo, while someone going to face Robby in the finals will be the Rocky.
This prediction came true in the episode The Fall, where the track Mecha Robby, which plays after Robby returns to the mat during his fight with Kenny, has similarities to Ivan Drago's theme from Rocky IV. Very quickly, the fight turned into a reference where Ivan ended Apollo Creed's career. Another prediction I made in the Season 4 trailer analysis is that we would get a confrontation at the prom, similar to what happened in the next Karate Kid.
Now that we know that the prom is a future plotline in the show, I doubt we could see Julie Pierce anytime soon in Season 4, but this could hint at a huge confrontation at the prom before the All Valley, much how like there was one in Next Karate Kid.
This somewhat happened, though it was really Robby and Tory getting into the minds of Miguel and Sam. The real confrontation happened at the after party, where the couples got into a poolside fight. Another prediction from this analysis video was that Tory was going to jump to Miyagi-Fang.
Notably, Tanner Buchanan is the only one not a part of the official mission to get the teaser over to Netflix. Now this is a huge shot in the dark, and I could be completely wrong about this, but hear me out. This could lead to two potential theories. The first, that since Peyton is on the team, she finally has a redemption arc and joins up with Eagle-Fang and Miyagi-Do either after the tournament or near the end of it. This one is a little tough to believe, considering that we know Tory and Robby are going to have a romantic arc thanks to these two teasers, but right now anything is up for pure speculation until the series is here.
While this was a very early call, it eventually did come true in Season 5. Tory reveals to Sam that Silver cheated and started to make amends with her former rival, helping Miyagi-Fang take down Terry Silver. Something else I deduced from the Season 4 trailer analysis was that Johnny was going to scout for new students, notably Devon.
The last shot we see is presumably Sam or Devon doing gymnastics, as you can see Johnny watching in the background. Now if this is Devon doing gymnastics, this could mean that Johnny is scouting for more people to join Eagle-Fang to combat against Cobra Kai.
This was sort of right, though the shot we saw was Johnny attempting to recruit Piper, as he would later find Devon in the middle of a debate thanks to Bert's help in Kicks Get Chicks. One of the final predictions from the trailer, which was also made in Why Terry Silver is Terrifying, was the eventual fight that would occur between Daniel and Terry Silver.
We also see more of Terry Silver, and most importantly, we see him training in the dojo. My guess is that Daniel and Terry will have a fight at some point, or better yet, we will have Daniel and Johnny taking on both Kreese and Silver. Silver could be training just to keep in shape, but with the way things have been so far, with Kreese having a fight in every season he's been in, I suspect we'll see some sort of fight with Terry Silver involved, especially with Kreese mentioning the fact that they're not the only ones teaming up. I would have loved to have seen a fight between Daniel and Terry, but this is something we most likely will see in Season 5.
Given LaRusso's trauma with Cobra Kai and especially Silver, this was bound to happen. Thankfully, it was built up right, and we didn't see this occur until Extreme Measures and Head of the Snake, where we got to see two different fights between Daniel and Silver. When we got the final trailer for Season 4, I did another analysis titled Everything We Know About Cobra Kai Season 4, where I further expanded on the prom confrontation theory, as it was Silver's idea to get into the minds of Sam and Miguel. We also saw Robby dipping someone at the prom, presumed to be Tory, and with the newest trailer, we can confirm it is indeed Tory as Robby's date. How either of them got back into the prom is hard to say, given that Robby and Tory were both expelled. If I had to guess, Silver probably slipped someone some money and was able to pull a favor to allow them to attend prom. This could also be a ploy by Kreese and Silver to also play mind games with Miyagi-Do and Eagle-Fang before the tournament, and although Silver said no fighting before the tournament, I think it's safe to say that this would still be some kind of tactic to goad Miyagi-Do and Eagle-Fang to strike first, so Cobra Kai can claim self-defense. This would also go back to my Tudum teaser breakdown, with the skit and the shot of Robby dipping Tory at the time could hint at a huge confrontation at the prom. Silver admits this in Party Time, and Robby and Tory's relationship had been hinted at as early as the end of Season 3. The tactic worked as Miguel had to bow out of the All Valley. In the same analysis video, I took a look at the poster we had and predicted that Demetri's rival would be Kyler and Hawk's would be Kenny during Season 4. The poster itself. As you may have seen on my community post or my Twitter, I noticed something about the poster right away. They are all paired off if you look at one character from the other. Silver and Daniel, Kreese and Johnny, Miguel and Robby, Sam and Tory, Kyler and Demetri, and Kenny and Hawk.
These would all make sense given that, outside of Kyler and Demetri, though this rivalry can clearly stem from Season 1 and Season 3, these have been shown in one or more of the teasers and trailers we've seen up to this point. It's easy to say that these are all going to be some of the driving plot lines of the season.
This kinda came true, though it was more so in Season 5. Hawk and Kenny did have some initial skirmishes, but the rivalry became more apparent in Season 5 in the episode Downward Spiral at the water park. Demetri and Kyler didn't have a rivalry per se, but the two finally got physical in Head of the Snake. In Terry Silver's first analysis video, Why Terry Silver is Terrifying, I predicted that Silver had surpassed Kreese in terms of martial arts.
It's also fair to say at this point that in terms of fighting ability, Silver may have even surpassed Kreese. Silver was able to take care of Johnny single-handedly, using strikes that mattered the most, taking away the ability to stand, the ability to breathe, and the ability to see. It is more than likely that Silver anticipated the defense that Johnny may have learned from Miyagi-Do, either because of his fight years ago with Miyagi, or because of Robby teaching the class Miyagi-Do techniques. If Chozen is the best defensive fighter, then Silver has to be the best offensive fighter at this point, as Terry never lost his touch.
Though we didn't initially see this right away, this came true in Season 6 in both of their confrontations in the episodes Unjangdo and Strike Glass, respectively. Silver had the upper hand in both fights, but on the yacht, Kreese had the last laugh. I personally think anyone could have guessed this, but in Kenny's character analysis video, How Kenny Became Corrupted, I predicted that Kenny would force Anthony to learn karate to defend himself.
What I imagine his arc to be like in the future is a complete 180 of what occurred in Season 4. Now tormenting LaRusso like Johnny did, and forcing Anthony to learn how to defend himself.
This happened in Bad Eggs, where Anthony was now on the receiving end of bullying, where it was vice versa in Season 4, and thankfully in a non-predictable way, Anthony never even defeated Kenny in a fight, even during Season 6. Another prediction I made in Kenny's analysis was that when Shawn got out, and because of Robby leaving Cobra Kai, Shawn would side with Kenny due to the fact that he went to juvie for his family.
With Shawn getting out in the summer or fall, and depending on the timeline of Season 5, I would imagine that Shawn is going to side with his brother and become one of the fighters that Cobra Kai needs. This could cause conflict between Kenny, Shawn, and Robby, as that since Robby is no longer part of Cobra Kai and was Kenny's mentor, he may have to fight Shawn once again, as Shawn is going to side with his family.
Though we did not see Shawn until Season 6, this was true. Robby and Shawn got into one more scrap at golf and stuff, though this time Robby had Miguel as backup. The final prediction I made for Kenny in his video was that he would come around, but it would take a long time. Because of where he was now, he wouldn't leave Cobra Kai that easily.
As someone who was also bullied in middle school because of the hobbies I enjoyed, Kenny is a very relatable character. You can sympathize that he wants to be able to fight back because he has no one else to back him up. It's just a shame that things turned out the way they did, and I hope he realizes the error of his ways in the future, but it may be a long time before that happens.
After the golf and stuff confrontation in Season 6, Kenny would finally join Miyagi-Do and make amends, but would leave at the end of the episode underdogs. However, Kenny would rejoin the dojo in Snakes on a Plane, hoping the dojo would advance in the Sekai Taikai. In my Season 4 Robby analysis, Why There Is Hope for Robby, I suspected that there would be one final decisive fight between him and Miguel that would end the rivalry for good.
I think that it will finally come to Johnny being there for both Miguel and Robby, and possibly one final fight will settle the rivalry, with Robby coming out on top saying, "It's over, we have no more reason to fight."
This kinda did happen, though it took more than one fight. The two put the past behind them thanks to Miguel showing mercy once again in Extreme Measures, but the two would have one more fight, though for the Miyagi-Do captain spot in Best of the Best, where Robby would finally and decisively defeat Miguel. Though Diaz initially claimed no hard feelings, there was still some tension between the two that was not resolved until Blood In, Blood Out, where Miguel reminded Robby that he was a leader. Despite his actions in previous seasons and the movies themselves, something big we saw hints of was Kreese's character change. In my first character analysis video, Why Kreese Was Misguided, and the Cobra Kai Season 5 teaser trailer we got, I predicted that Kreese would reflect on his actions, and Tory would help Kreese given what she knows about Silver bribing the All Valley ref.
In Season 5, I predict Kreese will reflect on his actions and what led to this point, possibly reconciling to an extent with Johnny. I also think that Tory will be a key in helping Kreese, as it's clear she respects him more than Silver, and also knows that Silver paid off the ref. How exactly she will help Kreese is unknown at this point, but I would love to see Kreese get out and fight Silver one-on-one to take control back of the dojo. I still feel like Kreese was also hidden from the trailer for a reason, as Martin Kove has stated in previous articles that his role in Season 5 will be emotional. Kreese more than likely will come to terms with the consequences of his actions, and as I've stated in my character analysis of him, he's doing what he can to break the pattern of his previous action.
This was true in most of the second half of Season 5, as it's revealed at the end of Extreme Measures that Tory had been working with Kreese for some time, but cuts ties with Kreese in the middle of the episode Taikai. Kreese would reflect on his actions in both Ouroboros and Head of the Snake before making his escape from prison after everything has happened. Though he didn't have much action in Season 4, I theorized in my video Why Demetri is Still Relatable that thanks to Chozen's training, Demetri gets stronger because of it.
With Chozen in the picture, Demetri will only get stronger and could maybe one day be on the same level as his peers who made it to the finals.
This kinda came true in a couple of ways. In Bad Eggs, he, Hawk, and Anthony come up with the idea to put all the eggs in one basket to successfully pass Chozen's training. Demetri is also seen doing the same punch that Chozen had performed in Mole against the Cobra Kai student in Head of the Snake, showing that he had taken Chozen's lessons to heart. In the same analysis video, I also predicted that Demetri would hack into Silver's hard drive.
Perhaps in Season 5, we could see a scene where Demetri is able to uncover what Terry has planned for the Valley through his tech-savvy skills, hacking into Silver's secret hard drive and leaking some illegal business operations he has fronts for.
This kinda came true, but not until the very end of the season. In Head of the Snake, Demetri and Hawk get the idea to find the footage Silver has on his server thanks to the tip from Tory. Demetri dug up information on Silver as early as Match Point, so it makes sense that they would expand on this in Season 5. My second Sam video, Why Sam Has Changed, had a prediction that the rivalry slowly would come to an end between her and Tory. Let's take a look.
I would also like to see the rivalry between her and Tory slowly start to come to an end, but I'm unsure how likely it's going to happen in Season 5.
This was not a groundbreaking prediction by any means, but it made sense given Tory's change in character midway through Season 4. The Season 5 episode Survivors marked the beginning of the end of the LaRusso-Nichols rivalry as it transitioned into an initially uneasy alliance. At the same time I released the Sam Season 4 analysis, I also released the Tory Season 4 analysis, where I predicted that Tory would have a more compelling arc in Season 5 because of what she knows about Terry Silver and her character shift after being helped by the LaRussos.
Giving Tory a tainted win will make her character that much more compelling in Season 5. Will she stay with Cobra Kai as the poster girl, or will she side with Kreese? And on the subject of that, what will happen when she finds out about Kreese? We know that he ultimately was the only real guidance she had in her life.
I actually welcome the double turn we got for both girls in Season 4, and in my opinion, that writing helped Peyton List steal the show a few times not only in Season 5, but also Season 6. I would argue that her arc in Seasons 4 through Season 6 gave her character more depth than what we initially saw in Season 2 and 3. Another prediction I made, somewhat, is that Tory and Devon fight again, mainly to erase any doubts about the tainted win Tory had over Lee.
I would also like to see her fight Devon again in either another tournament or in some other capacity. As I mentioned in my discussion with Ken, because of the crooked referee, Tory technically only beat Devon by 2 points, and that leaves another tainted win on her record.
This fight played out in Ouroboros, and it was executed nicely for a few different reasons. It showed the two students had common ground, Tory was capable of mentoring someone else, and to an extent later on protect them. It proved that Tory was a superior fighter despite the shady referee, and it showed that she can tap into the no mercy mode at any time. When we got the teaser trailer for Season 5, I was unsure about who Sam was exactly fighting, but one of my guessed that it was a dark version of herself, as we saw some of the people in the same dark room with Sam to symbolize her confronting her inner turmoil.
As for Sam, I feel that the scene she's in is either a dream or some kind of room that's giving her flashbacks, as she's being watched by Yasmin and Moon from the Halloween party in Season 1, and Hawk with his trophy from Season 4. I'm unsure of who she's fighting, but I would imagine it would be either a new Miyagi-Do student, who could be possibly one of Chozen's students, or a dark representation of herself, as we know that Sam was the one to use both Sai and bow staff, two Miyagi-Do weapons.
Although some people were a little upset that Sam was quitting karate again, this scene served its purpose. What was really important to Sam, and could she get out of her own head like she did in Season 3? For the final Season 5 trailer analysis, one of my predictions was that Kreese would become a last-minute ally to Johnny, Daniel, and Chozen.
My guess is because Tory airs out that Silver purposely paid off the ref and overthrew Kreese's sensei. This is what causes Cobra Kai's victory to be null and void, and is why Silver is hosting this tournament instead. With that being said, this could also call for Kreese's release from prison, and perhaps he will be a last-minute ally to Daniel's alliance to help against the numbers game that Silver is currently winning.
This sort of happened. Kreese had been using Tory to slip clues to Daniel LaRusso, and after some back and forth during a visit, agreed to help both Daniel and Johnny by revealing what Silver's true motives were for Cobra Kai. In Johnny's Season 4 analysis video, Why Johnny Lawrence is Becoming a Better Sensei, I theorized that he would help his two sons get over their rivalry.
As I mentioned before in my prior breakdown, I'm excited for Johnny being able to bring Miguel at some point, and hopefully that the rivalry between his two sons is put to the side enough to stop Cobra Kai. It's going to weigh solely on Johnny's shoulders to make things right between them, as he is one of the only reasons why Miguel and Robby are at odds.
We see this finally play out in extreme measures, but we could trace this back to the beginning of season 5 in the episode Long Long Way From Home, where Johnny came clean to Robby on why he brought him to Mexico. Thankfully, this was a long time coming, and it was great to see the two work together not only during season 5, but also season 6. In the same video, I also theorized that similar to season 3, Silver would be defeated in a combined effort. I'm not sure who exactly Johnny will fight outside of Hyun Woo, but I would love for him to assist in taking down Silver, similar to how both Daniel and Johnny were able to take down Kreese through combined efforts. Perhaps if Chozen is teaching Johnny and Miyagi-Do offense and defense specifically, I think it's possible that Johnny can come close to beating Silver on his own, but I don't see Silver being solely defeated by one person. In order to really demonstrate how powerful he is, it's going to take a combined effort like season 3, and honestly, Johnny also lost his first fight against Kreese on his own anyway. This made sense, as when the writing was set up to protect both Kreese and Silver in this manner, it gave more credibility to their strength as fighters in the Miyagi-verse. One of the videos I made following the release of season 5 was What Will Happen in Cobra Kai season 6, where I speculated a number of different plot lines of what would happen in the next season. Here's one where I talked about the fate of Terry Silver. The first storyline we should talk about is Terry Silver's arrest and what will happen now that he's in custody. At this point, it's hard to say if he's out of the equation completely, given the amount of power and resources that he possesses. However, Hayden Schlossberg recently responded to a question stating that Silver will be charged for attacking Stingray instead of Kreese. He also makes a point that the bigger issue here is Silver's reputation. Daniel's plan had worked, and now the Valley will see who he truly is. I'm not entirely sure what will also happen now that it's revealed he rigged the tournament. It's hard to say if the All-Valley board is willing to do a do-over, given how far Tory went in the tournament, and now that they'll question every fight Tory had, with notable favoritism in her fights against Devon and Tory. In the scenario that he does still attempt to enter the Sekai Tekai, I doubt that he will still have assistance from Kim Da-Eun, due to her disapproval of Silver's rivalry with Daniel LaRusso, and therefore also questioning how good he really is as a teacher, since he had to use so many underhanded tactics to fabricate his reputation. Kim Da-Eun also could care less about money, as we see from her first interaction with Terry on screen, proving that she cares more about her grandfather's legacy. This makes Da-Eun similar to Chozen in this regard, where they both care more about honor and honoring the memory of their legacy more so than money. Notice that she is also nowhere to be seen once Silver is defeated and arrested, last seen in the background as all the Cobra Kai students quit and throw their shirts and jackets onto Silver. Despite how you feel about Cobra Kai Season 6 being split into multiple parts, his reveal at the end of Snakes on a Plane was beautifully done and added to his character. It made sense that Silver would not go down that easily, and considering that he had no allies left at this point, he was on his own. In the same video, and also the teaser breakdown for Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 1, I suspected that Kreese's charges would be dropped, as Silver was exposed for not only rigging the All Valley, but Stingray coming forward on Silver being behind his beatdown and not Kreese. While Kreese is going to be on the run as he's escaped from prison, as we mentioned before, those charges are going to be dropped, and if anything, the only thing he will be charged with is for assaulting an officer. Though it's still unclear at this point how Kreese not only got away with assaulting officers breaking out of prison, mainly because I don't believe his explanation in Season 6 Episode 6, and how he was able to traverse between USA and Korea in any other form of transportation outside of instant transmission, this made the most sense because of Silver being the one taken away in a police car at the end of Season 5. In the previous two videos, and funny enough, there were a few people who didn't think Kreese would team up with the Kims. Kreese teaming up with Kim Da-Eun made the most sense because of the flashback, and Da-Eun asked about Kreese as soon as she got off the plane. We know that he and Kim Da-Eun have a friendly enough relationship, as she even noticed he wasn't present when Silver greeted her. This is also hinted at in the flashback, as he was kind enough to hide her while she watched him and Silver spar. They also have both one true goal in common, like Silver did: legacy. Kim Da-Eun wants her grandfather's teachings to be known, and Kreese wants his legacy to live on through the teachings of Cobra Kai. If it came down to it, I also wouldn't be surprised if Kim Da-Eun helped Kreese with his legal problems, knowing that Silver was too caught up in the rivalry with Daniel, betrayed John Kreese, and used so many underhanded tactics to again fabricate his reputation. If Kreese takes the reins and partners up with Kim Da-Eun and her students, as Cobra Kai has lost all the students Silver recruited at this point, or most, Johnny and Daniel will meet him on the mat once again. As far as Kreese, this is going to be a wild guess, but assuming he did successfully end up fleeing the country, it's likely that he and Kim Da-Eun are restarting Cobra Kai in South Korea. This was a major plot point in Season 6, as he was with the team for most of the season up until the Sekai Taikai Brawl. Kreese stated he was Cobra Kai, and he would do anything to ensure that was true. One of the predictions I'm the most proud of, as I called it almost 2 years in advance, was that because Johnny mirrored Miyagi's life so much, it was very possible that there would be complications at birth with Carmen and the new baby. I think it's important to explore all possibilities, and I hope that I am dead wrong about this, but as we've seen all the parallels and similarities to Johnny Lawrence and Mr. Miyagi, we could see a parallel where Johnny faces a medical emergency with Carmen, just how Mr. Miyagi lost both his wife and son due to complications at birth. This happened while Mr. Miyagi was away fighting during World War II, and in the event something happens with Carmen, Johnny may have to bow out to help Carmen or attempt to be there for her and the baby. I don't think that the show would pull the rug out from under us like that, but we also know how much they love to parallel the movies, whether it's the good, bad, or the ugly, and right now, anything is fair game until Season 6 is here. Now thankfully, I was only sort of right about this, as Carmen and the baby made it out okay in the end, but this was a huge tease at the end of Dog in the Fight, and it was one of the major storylines of Snakes on a Plane. The writers really liked the parallels from the original films. In my Mike Barnes analysis, why Mike Barnes is unpredictable, one of my hopes was that Mike Barnes would offer some kind of training to Miyagi-Fang to help them prepare for the Sekai Taikai. I would love to personally see him aid Miyagi-Fang in their training for the Sekai Taikai, though it's hard to say if he would want to have anything to do with karate after Silver going down. If not, perhaps he can at least provide some of his own experience on how he was a troubled youth and how he came over it, or at the very least why some rivalries aren't just worth holding on to. I was glad to see Mike Barnes make a return, as I feel his appearance was limited in Season 5, and more could have been added to the story because of his past connection to Terry Silver, and like Daniel, was someone who was burned by said connection. Fun fact, Shawn revealed in my interview with him that at one point, Mike was considered to return in Season 6 Part 2 for the Sekai Taikai, but it did not happen.
Originally, I was going to be at the Sekai Taikai, and from what I understand, what I was told was that the show's budget was, they started restricting the show's budget.
I see.
And I even said to the producers, look, I'll come as what's called a local hire, which means I'll fly myself there, put myself up, and save you that money. And they said, Shawn, we can't even do that. We just don't have the money to do it. I was really crushed because, I think it would have been one more interesting aspect of Johnny getting advice from a very different, a different mindset. But you know what? Look, I live my life in abundance and gratitude, and I'm thankful for the opportunity that I had to be there on 2 different seasons. I don't look at what I wasn't given.
Right.
So you know.
After Season 5, I made a second Chozen analysis video, Why Chozen is Awesome, and made a prediction that after his work was done in the Valley, he would return to Okinawa and reunite with Kumiko. There is a chance where this would not happen though, as I'd imagine with his work being done, if Cobra Kai does not enter the tournament, he'd probably return to Okinawa after his injuries have healed, and perhaps the storyline with Kumiko will be fleshed out a bit more. It would put a nice bow on things, as Chozen is the only adult out of the 4 to not have a romantic partner or children. Although this prediction was a little early, we do learn at the end of the Season 6 episode Sleeper that he decides to spend what time he has left with Kumiko and goes back to Tomi Village Green. However, as we learn in Binga Boots at Barcelona, it ended in a disaster. In May 2024, we got our first teaser of the last season of Cobra Kai. We saw an interesting scene of Tory and Sam fighting on the sparring deck, which I speculated was for points. With Sam and Tory sparring, this could be their way of fighting it out as Robby Miguel did in Season 5, though this time they will be fighting for points as Tory knows she did not win the All Valley tournament fair and square. Maybe we'll even see Tory put her championship trophy on the line. I was sort of right, as part of my prediction was that they were going to fight for Tory's trophy, which she had already returned to the Cobra Kai dojo and was probably still there when the dojo was being torn down. However, while they were fighting in a points-based match, it was for the female captain spot of Miyagi-Do for the Sekai Taikai. In the same analysis video, I noticed that Kenny was absent for most of the teaser, though was present in some shots. To me, it made sense that there would be a confrontation between him and Robby before he joined the dojo. As far as the fight between Kenny, Shawn, Miguel, and Robby, This could be Robby's attempt to talk to Kenny after Daniel and Silver's fight at Cobra Kai. Kenny may leave out some details while recounting the events to Shawn and claim that Miguel is the one who attacked him. Robby may intervene and try to talk some sense into Shawn, but then this leads to the fight that we see happen in the teaser. To me, this made the most sense, especially if Shawn was involved. As Daniel said in Season 5, sometimes you need to fight it out to get through your problems, though that advice is obviously situation specific. Unfortunately, as we saw in the final trailer for Season 6 Part 1, one of the low points for me for Season 6 was that Daniel and Johnny got into conflict once again. This is what I thought was going to happen. Though Johnny and Daniel seem to be getting along, there's going to be a brief conflict that hopefully Chozen will help settle so that they can get everyone working on the same page. I was sort of right about this, but did not want to be. In the end, I understand how this was necessary for it to play out, but it seemed like the past few seasons we finally got to a point where Daniel and Johnny got along, only for it to fall apart right before setting foot into the tournament arena. Though he did not get the captain's spot, in my Season 5 video, Why Miguel Diaz Continues to Evolve, I made a mention that Miguel would help lead the dojo by example. However, given the final trailer for Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 1, it looks like there will be one more fight between the two. I think this may be more for who is going to lead the dojo in a competitive spar, so we can only wait and see how it will turn out. Like his fellow Miyagi-Fangs, Miguel saw the benefit of forming one's way and in some cases, followed both of his sensei's examples and lessons when it came to hashing things out, advising others to not hold on to grudges, defending his loved ones, and to stay close to those near to his heart. Like Daniel, he'll continue to fight for what he believes in, and I think it's appropriate that he's going to help lead the dojo by example. Johnny calling Miguel the anchor in the episode Dog in the Fight was a perfect metaphor to describe Diaz. Even if he wasn't the captain, he could still help the team in his own way. It made perfect sense. Another Season 5 video I made, which was called Why Terry Silver is Still Terrifying, talks about how I thought Terry Silver and Kreese were finally going to come head to head in a current dream match I had never thought we'd see. What I would personally love to see is a fight between Kreese and Silver, and if the two cross paths again, I doubt John is going to let him off easy for what he did. In Season 6, we were lucky enough not only to see this happen once, but twice. These made for some epic fights with crazy endings for both. In Robby's newest video at the time, How Robby Became Better, I suspected that like Miguel, Robby would also stand out as the leader of the dojo. This is what I had to say. This is what I suspect gets Kenny to finally join Miyagi-Fang, and I'm also sure we'll see that this is when Kenny will finally put his anger toward Robby aside. I'm also hoping to see more of his relationships with Tory, Johnny, Miguel, and Anthony, as it seems he's going to take the latter under his wing. I think Robby has finally redeemed himself, and he'll stand out as one of the dojo's leaders not only when it comes to skill, but when it comes to growth as a human being. I didn't think he would be the actual leader of the dojo, but it was awesome to finally see Robby get a big win and prove that he had the potential to guide the other students as he had done previously, even if it was under Kreese. Another Season 5 character analysis I did was on Sam LaRusso, titled How Sam Finally Found Peace. Given how her arc played out with Tory near the end of Season 5, I speculated she would grow as a person, specifically when it comes to her relationships with Tory. Sam was not only able to put the rivalry with Tory behind her, but managed to reconcile with Miguel and also helped her father, just like he helped her. I suspect with Season 6, we'll continue to see more leadership with her, as we saw hints of it in Season 5 when she helped teach Anthony. While some people are not a fan of her character, I believe she's grown as a person and will continue to do so. After all Cobra Kai characters have their hiccups at times, and when we see those moments of growth, that's one of the reasons that makes the show enjoyable. Although many could see this was bound to happen, there were some big moments that happened in Season 6 that pointed to this. Sam owning up to what she did with Tory in Sleeper, understanding Tory but forgiving her in Bingavoots at Barcelona, saving Tory in Ungjang-do, helping Tory train in Rattled while putting things behind them, and finally accepting that she didn't need a fight and letting Tory know that she deserved to win in Skeletons and Strike Last, respectively. In Anthony's character analysis, Why Anthony Has Changed, in a video I did right after Season 6 Part 1 called What Will Happen in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2, I expected that we would finally get a concrete resolution to Anthony and Kenny's rivalry while also seeing what's going on in the valley during the Sekai Taikai. Anthony's come a long way, but he still has a journey ahead. I think he'll be appreciated more as a character when he buries the hatchet completely with Kenny in Season 6, which is bound to happen as Pain joins Miyagi-Fang and comes clean about everything up to that point. I would love to see a Robby Miguel type of friendship between the two, and now that Anthony has proper mentors in both Robby and Sam, as the former was seen in a few scenes helping him out, he'll finally be on the right path. The sixth topic, what will happen with Kenny and Anthony now? I was half expecting this rivalry to be resolved in part 1, but thanks to Devon sabotaging Kenny's water bottle, this has escalated the conflict even more. Anthony losing to Kenny during the Capture the Flag challenge I feel was one of the best writing choices they made during part 1, as it would have been a little too predictable for Anthony to get a win over Kenny. I imagine the relationship between the two will get a little more tense and back to their old rivalry, leading to a final and decisive fight. This rivalry cannot be resolved without Leah at the very least, who so far has still been absent since Minefields, and while it may not be necessary, I'd like for Zach to be also somewhat involved in this storyline. My guess is that we will cut between what's happening in the valley and at the Sekai Taikai for both parts 2 and 3. I think most people would also say that this was going to happen, but it's a shame that they did not bring back Leah for whatever reason, as she was the source of why this happened in the first place, or at least exacerbated. The two finally put everything to rest definitively in Snakes on a Plane. Another theory I had in What Will Happen in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 was that despite the friction between the two binary brothers, they would eventually patch things up in the next part of Season 6. The fifth theory, what will the relationship be like between Demetri and Hawk? As we saw in Underdogs, Hawk realizes that he may not want to go to MIT after the fight at the frat party. Demetri, however, still believed that the two would go to school together. The binary brothers get into an argument before the final challenge, and this gives Demetri the motivation to bring out his inner Eagle Fang by taking the flag from Hawk. From this point on, his demeanor also changes. He spikes his hair and walks around with the swagger, becoming even more sarcastic towards Hawk, and even Sam, who is genuinely complimenting him for getting into MIT. When Hawk is chosen as Tory's replacement, Demetri simply looks at him and doesn't even smile. It's also worth pointing out that in Inside the Dojo, there's a shot where Robby looks at Miguel and Demetri, and Devon and Hawk are likely behind them, as we see someone in a white gi standing behind the four in front. Another behind-the-scenes shot shows Hawk in a group fight during the tournament. I suspect that they'll eventually forgive each other for their actions, but it is interesting seeing the role swap where Demetri is now more overconfident and Hawk is laid back. If Demetri is not careful, he could wind up hurt by letting the pride get to his head. I don't think anyone thought they would be mad at each other for long, but it was great to see the heartfelt moment they had in the locker room before beating Cobra Kai. After the release of Season 6 Part 1, I did a character analysis video on Tory called The Downfall of Tori Nichols. Despite Nichols secretly switching dojos, I couldn't help but feel that she would still confide in Robby, especially after everything they've been through at this point. As I talked about in my What Will Happen in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 video, Tory and Robby will likely have a conversation at the bar. Perhaps she'll finally confide in how she feels about her mother's passing to Keen in an attempt to rejoin Miyagi-Do. This clearly was a major plot point in Season 6 Part 2, and this happened relatively early on in that part of the season. This made the most sense because of the promise they made in Best of the Best, and that Robby knew about Tory's initial meeting with Kreese. One video I did on the final trailer for Season 6 Part 2 was everything we know about Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2. Even though it wasn't shown in the trailer, I felt that Devon had to come clean because Kenny was seen in some promotional pictures. And while it may not be Demetri as predicted in my latest video on him, it could be likely Devon, as she seems to have taken a nasty fall. If she doesn't get injured, then my guess is that she either comes clean or it's found out that she cheated during the Capture the Flag challenge, which explains why Kenny makes his return. I still didn't like the writing of her character in Underdogs because it seemed to contradict what her character was about in Season 5, especially because of how the ref favored Tory. I'm glad she came clean in Dog in the Fight, but I feel this character shift was a bit unnecessary. In the same video, I talked about why Johnny defeating Mike Barnes was a big deal. A lot of people were upset by it, but I figured it would set up something greater for Johnny if they were willing to write this fight in. Regarding Sensei Wolf and Johnny, I think they're going to at least get into one physical confrontation, and if Johnny comes out on top, that makes his victory over Mike Barnes that much more meaningful. And once you know it, the last fight of the series was Johnny Lawrence versus Sensei Wolf for the Sekai Taikai Championship in the final episode, Ex-Degenerate. My final prediction of the video was that Tory kicking someone on TV was not the real shot that Amanda was reacting to. This was a fake out they did similarly with the Season 5 trailer when Johnny slammed his laptop because of Silver's commercial. I also think that where Tory is shown kicking someone near the end of the trailer, where Amanda and the rest of the students are watching, is meant to be a shot of something else, as we see that she has a shocked look on her face as she holds her phone close, as she's just received some bad news. My guess is it has to do with Sam getting hurt or her hearing about Carmen, but we can only wait and see when Part 2 arrives on November 15th. I was kinda right about this, as the real shot Amanda was reacting to was Kwan's death. Still one of the best cliffhangers of all time. Cobra Kai has been a hell of a ride, and before the spoilers got too heavy, I loved all the speculation for the seasons ahead at the time. That seemed to be one of the best times to be a fan, and also why I looked forward to the new season so much. If you want to stroll down memory lane, check out the rest of these videos.